It's amazing that the Haftorah, speaking about miracles, that we just saw this amazing movie about miracles. There are no coinky-dinkies, Abraham, that the movie that we just saw about the great miracles of Israel. Well, the Haftorah speaks about this great miracle, the greatest miracle of all, where Elisha Hanavi resurrects a dead child. Elisha Hanavi in the Haftorah, the book of Kings 2, chapter 4. The Haftorah this week, I think it's on page 1134 in the blue books. The back of the arch called the Stone Chumash. The greatest miracle of all, Elisha Hanavi promises this barren woman a child. And the child dies. And, speaking about miracles, he resurrects the dead child. Now this dead child grew up to be, I think it's 1134 in the back, grew up to be the prophet Habakkuk. Why? Why was he called? It's a strange name. No, Habakkuk. Does anybody know anybody called today Habakkuk?
No. Not very popular.
But it's a name. It's a biblical prophet named Habakkuk. Where does the name come from? Habakkuk means the hugged one. Because Elisha promised her, he died. He died as a young child. Look at the Haftorah in 1134. It's the whole story there. Elisha promises her, just like God promised Sarah, you're going to have a baby despite your old age because of your kindness. So Elisha promises the Shunammite, despite her old age, that she will have a baby in reward for her kindness, his hospitality. And Elisha said, At choiveket ben, in 1 year's time you will be hugging a child. So this child grew up to be the prophet Habakkuk, which means what? The hugged one. So that's where the name comes from. Now, he resurrects the child. How does he resurrect the child? The child dies. It says he laid down on the dead child, and he put his mouth on the dead child's mouth, and he put his what? Eyes on the dead child's eyes, and he stretched out on him, and he began to breathe into him. What does that remind you of, Connie? Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Says the Radak, writing in the 1200s. Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, Masha, doesn't work for a dead guy. It only works for what? For a living person. Why is he doing this for a dead person? Says the great Radak, the commentator, that all miracles are done through natural way. Since a living person who's unconscious or who faints, how do you bring him back? Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. So even though this child was dead, Elisha went through the motions of a natural event, because all miracles are grounded in nature. In fact, how do you say nature in Hebrew, Abraham? Ha-teva, which is the same gematria as God. Elokim is gematria teva. So therefore, even though mouth-to-mouth resuscitation does not work on a dead person, but Elisha went through the motion here because that's how you revive a living person that fainted. So miracles are grounded in nature, because to God, whether it's nature or supernatural, it's what? It's all the same. For him, it's the same thing. So he went through the motions, and he resurrected this dead child, and he became the prophet Habakkuk. Now, the greatest miracle of all that we know, Avi, in the Bible is what? Splitting of the Red Sea. If you read the account over there, splitting of the Red Sea, it says God made a Hurricane Katrina blow all night. Or maybe Hurricane Marie. What's the latest one called? Gloria? Sandy? What's it? Sandy? Yeah. Harvey. Look at the text, Avram. It says God made Hurricane Harvey blow all night to split the Red Sea. Why did God have to do that? He could have snapped his fingers and split the Red Sea. Says the Abarbanel that all miracles are grounded in nature. Hurricane Harvey blowing all night can divide the waters. So therefore, even though God could have split the Red Sea in a second, miracles are grounded in nature. So he had Hurricane Irma. I don't want to discriminate. Harvey, Irma blow all night, and that divided the sea. Why does God do that? Why are all miracles grounded in Teva?
Give people the opportunity not to believe.
Beautiful, Yehuda Lev. The man hit a home run. If miracles came out of nowhere, we'd all become robots. 1 second, we'd all become robots. So even in the greatest miracle of all, splitting of the Red Sea, God had to disguise it as Hurricane Harvey or Irma, like Yehuda Lev said, in order to allow free will to operate. I could still say, nah, it's Hurricane Harvey, it's not God. So the greatest of all miracles. And even here, the resurrection of the dead child, he did mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Maybe the child really wasn't dead.
Yeah, that's possible.
Maybe he wasn't dead. We know he was. But God has to do it this way in order not to turn me into a robot.
Oh, I like that.
To allow free will to operate, there has to be this window of doubt. Does he or doesn't he? Only the hairdresser knows for sure. Remember that?
Yeah.
So therefore, Abraham, so the miracle is disguised in nature. He put mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. The hurricane blew all night the Red Sea to split in order to allow my free will to operate, not to turn me into a puppet. Because God doesn't want any puppets. What does he want? Partners. So if he wants me to be a partner, he has to leave my free will intact by leaving a window of doubt. That's the key. Now,
You know, Rabbi,
yes.
today in the movie, we saw a miracle in the Golan Heights. When that real strong wind
Came out of nowhere.
Right.
But maybe it was a coinky dinky. The wind blew and blew open and exposed the mines. Right? But maybe it was just a quirk of nature. We know it wasn't. You and I, Elisheva, know it wasn't. But God has to leave that window of doubt. Not to turn me into a puppet. To allow me to be a partner. Isn't that wonderful?
He's so sweet.
Yes.
Okay, a couple of days ago in the Jerusalem Post,
Right.
they had a write-up that the first solar eclipse turned the time when Joshua, when the sun stopped.
The solar eclipse,
Joshua.
right?
That's right. It was exact that time.
So God manipulates nature. What is miracles? Supernatural nature, to him it's all the same thing. So God could have... Now we know the sun doesn't stop. What do you mean Joshua stopped the sun? Dr. Abramson. The Radak asked amazing kasha. The Radak writing in the 1200s.
It was
He says, we know that the sun doesn't move. We know that the earth what? Rotates and the sun stays. What do you mean the sun stopped? Radak is asking this question. So a Jew answers a question with what? The New York Times writes sunrise, sunset, the paper of record. We fit all the news that's fit to print. You check the New York Times, it says sunrise and sunset. And we know the sun doesn't rise and the sun doesn't set. So what is the New York Times writing sunrise and sunset? What's the answer? Dibrei Torah, beautiful. Koloshim Nayodam. The Torah speaks in the language of men. To us, it looks like the sun is rising and setting. So the New York Times is writing from our perspective. And Radak, writing in the 1200s, says, we know the sun doesn't move. What do you mean Yeshua stopped the sun? He says, yeah, but to the naked eye, to us it looks like the sun is moving across the sky. The Torah is writing from what we see. Isn't that amazing? How the Radak knew that? In Hebrew it's called Dibrei Torah Keloshan B'nei Adam. The Torah speaks and is written for the language of human beings. So to us it looked like Yeshua stopped the sun, because to us it looks like the sun is moving even though we know it's not. But getting back to our Parsha, God sends 3 malachim disguised as Arabs. Why 3? Rashi says they were disguised as Arabs, vagabonds. Why 3? 1 to announce to Sarah she's going to have a baby. 1 to what? Cure Abraham. And 1 to nuke Sodom. Why did he have to send 3? Says Rashi, because the angels have a very strong union. 1 angel cannot do 2 separate missions. Okay?
Not my job.
So, not my job. You ever walk into a restaurant, the waiter says, not my table, right? So the one that cured Abraham, he went to rescue Lot. So you should be 4 angels. So Rashi says no, because rescue and Hatzalah curing and Hatzalah is the same mission. So the same angel Raphael that cured Abraham, he went on to rescue Lot from the burning city. Because Rashi says that curing and rescuing what? Are the same. So the angel union would not complain.
Okay.
But I got a starke kasha on this. God already at the end of Parshas Lech Lo already had announced to Abraham that his wife is going to have a baby. So why was it necessary to send an angel disguised as an Arab to tell Sarah she's going to have a baby when Abraham had already told Abraham in person you're going to have a baby? In the end of Parshas Lech Lecha, God promises your wife will have a baby. You'll call his name Yitzchak.
He didn't tell Sarah.
Oh, he didn't tell Sarah. That's the answer. For some reason, he did not tell Sarah. Now, even surprise. Now, even though Rashi says that Sarah was a greater prophet than whom? Abraham. In this episode, Abraham, you asked me the question in the morning. God kept her in the dark.
Why?
Now, why? We'll talk. Can we talk? So even though normally she would get a bigger message than him, but for some reason God chose to keep her in the dark and only tell Abraham the great news. Why didn't Abraham share the news with his wife? So the Ramban tells us, the Talmud in Yevamos tells us, it keeps saying in the Torah over and over again, God spoke to Moses, repeat. God spoke to Moses, repeat. Vaydabar Sheva Moshe Lemor. Vayomer Sheva Moshe Lemor. Hundreds of times it's written. God spoke to Moses, repeat. Again and again. Why? So the Talmud explains, if God tells a Navi a prophecy, and he doesn't say the word repeat, he couldn't even repeat it to his own life. So God spoke to Moses, repeat. God spoke to Moses, repeat. If God wouldn't say that, Moses would not be authorized to what? To tell us the whole Torah. For some reason, God never told Abraham Lamor. We'll see in a minute why. So he was not authorized to share the great happy news with his wife. She was supposed to be kept in the dark. She didn't know. So therefore, God sent a malach disguised as an Arab to tell her. And she laughed. Avram also laughed. Rashi says Avram laughed in joy. And she laughed mockingly.
Didn't believe it.
She didn't believe it. Why couldn't she believe it? She's a greater Navi than what? Than Abraham. Why did Abraham laugh in joy, in belief? And Rashi claims she laughed mockingly. So the answer is she never heard from Hashem. She only heard from this guy who she thought he's a schlepper and he's flattering her because he wants a meal next week again. Be kind to the hostess, you'll get another meal. That's why God, she was used to seeing malachim. Why did the malach have to disguise himself? Yes, Abraham and Sarah, malachim were frequent visitors. If Hagar saw malachim where? In the middle of nowhere, you don't think Abraham and Sarah saw malachim in their tent? It's a kal v'chomer. So why did God have to send a malach disguised as a schlepper begging for a meal? Test. And why was God upset with Sarah? She didn't believe because she never heard it from Hashem. She only heard it from what she thought was a vagabond. So therefore she's scoffed. So why was God upset with her? The Mishnah says, Al tihi berchat hedyet kala beinecha. Even what you think Joe the bum gives you a bracha, don't dismiss it, don't mock it. It's all a message from Hashem. That's the message that Ramban said the Torah is teaching me. God purposely kept Sarah in the dark. And he didn't allow the angel to who he was. Then Sarah would believe. But the angel was disguised as what?
Vagabond.
A vagabond. I like that word. In order to teach that even if a vagabond gives you a bracha, do not mock, do not dismiss it. Say amen. Because you never know where God's Yeshua will come. That's the message for the year 2017. Every human being deserves respect, even though you think he's a schlepper. Sarah thought he's a schlepper. Don't dismiss anybody. Someone praises you, gives you a bracha, Don't laugh, don't mock, say amen. And that's the message that we learned from Mother Sarah. And that's why God kept her in the dark. Abraham, you asked me in the morning, and why the Malach had to disguise himself as a vagabond. To teach this powerful message, the Mishnah says, Al tehi berchat heget kala be'anecha. Even if nobody gives you a bracha, don't dismiss it. You gotta believe, because God has many agents out there, even though you think he's a nobody. Powerful message.
Of course she had to keep her in the dark. She was pregnant,
Yeah, okay. So anyway, Abraham sees these, they're disguised as what? Schleppers, and he invites them what? He says, sit underneath the tree, right? And I will give you a meal, right? Now, it's interesting. It looks like Lot is a greater Baal Chesed than Abraham. Does Abraham invite him into the house? Says, go sit under the tree and I will what? Bring the meal out to you. Later on, Lot sees the Malachim. And he what? He invites them into the home. It looks like Abraham, nephew Lot is what? A bigger Baal Chesed than what? Than his uncle. What's the message over here? Let's compare Lot's Chesed with Abraham. Abraham says, you guys wait under the tree, I'll bring you your lunch. Lot says, no, come into my home. Make yourself at home. It looks like Lot is what? A greater Baal Chesed. And we know, Dr. Abramson, that no. What's the message the Torah is teaching me? Which Chesed is greater, Abraham's or Lot? Lot's Chesed was reckless.
Why?
Maybe these guys are, who knows, child molesters. You can invite total strangers into your home. Who knows? Maybe they'll molest your wife and daughters. Lot's Chesed is reckless, says the Ramchal. Make sure Lot's Chesed, Avram, is flawed. You're taking total strangers into your home. You have a wife and daughters home. Maybe they'll be sexually harassed. Lot's Chesed was reckless and flawed. Abraham's Chesed is the way to go. You want to do Chesed? Do Chesed for your wife and family first. Don't take total strangers into your home. They need a meal? Fine. Feed them under the tree. We practice Abraham's Chesed, not Lot's. Chesed for your wife and family as well. Don't put them in sakana, in danger. So Avram brought out the meal to them. I don't know who these guys are. Maybe they're Jack the Ripper. How do I know who they are? Right. So therefore, Lot is not the way. Lot's Chesed was reckless and flawed, inviting total strangers into your home. You need a meal? Fine. So therefore, the Torah compares and contrasts Lot's Chesed with Uncle Abraham. Isn't that amazing? So God comes to visit him. In the middle of the visit, he has these three strangers. So he tells God, excuse me, I got to put you on hold. Let me take care of the guests and I'll get back to you. So the Talmud learns from here that feeding hungry guests is greater than what? Than talking to God. Now why? We learn from Abraham. But how did he know he's doing the right thing? Maybe it's being disrespectful if God would come to visit you, right? And three strangers are knocking on the back door. You say, go away, you know? How do you say, God, I'll put you on hold and I'll take care of the strangers? We learn from him that's the way to go. The question is, how did he know? Because Abraham knows that nothing happens by chance. Why did the guests come now? They could have come before God's visit. They could have come, Avi, after God's visit. If they came right in the middle of God's visit, it's a siman that God wants me to take care of them. Otherwise, they wouldn't come in the middle. They'd come before the visit. Nothing happens by chance. So that's how Abraham knew that Hashem wants me to take care of them. Otherwise, they wouldn't come now. You meet somebody at 10 o'clock or 9:30, 11:30, it's all, you know the famous story, the Panovich of Rosh Hashiva. Connie, it's a famous story. He was going to do a Masada Kedushin, one of his Talmidim. And it was, they have the chuppah outside. It's dark, underneath this guy. And the chassan's about to put the ring on the finger of the kala. He drops the ring. And it's dark. And for 7 minutes, they couldn't find the ring. Till Avram, they finally found it. So people said, he's a shlamazel. It's a bad sign. Drops the ring and scrounges in the dark until he finds it. So the Palanitzer Rebbe said, it's not a shlamazel. It was written in Shemayim that Yaakov was going to marry Rachel at 8:10. At 8:10. It was only 8:02. So he had to drop the ring because he wasn't supposed to marry Rachel until 8:10. And it was only 8:03. So he had to search 7 minutes for the ring. Nothing happens by chance. He dropped the ring. The Orchim came now, not before or after. Is a siman that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to what? Interrupt and take care of them. And take care of them. Because when you are being kind to a human being, you're being kind to Hashem. Kani Tzatufer. Isn't that an amazing idea? When you're kind to a human being, you're also kind what? To HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because every human being has an image of God inside of him. And therefore the Baal HaTanya says, how do you love God? How do you love God? Many ways. One way is by loving your fellow Jew. If you love your fellow Jew or your fellow human being, you're also loving his creator, right? So therefore Avraham knew that that's the way to go, right? By being kind to people, you're also being kind to their creator. That's Avraham knew that is the way to go. Now, it says in the text, very interesting. So, they come to his house, and it says that what? These 3 men nitzavim olav. In Genesis 18, verse 2, I don't know if the English has that, he says he sees 3 men nitzavim olav, standing over him. That's what the Hebrew says. Genesis 18:2, 3 men are standing over him. Now what does that mean? Then after he gives them the meal, it says in Genesis 18:8, he stood over them. What are we playing, musical chairs here? In Genesis 18:2, it says the 3 men stood over Abraham. In Genesis 18:8, after they have the delicious meal, it says he stood over them. What's the message? Malachim tower over human beings, right? These were not really men, they were disguised. Remember Clark Kent, Superman? So they towered over him. But after he served them their meal, Hu omed aleihem. Then the pasuk says he towered over them. Angel stands over a human being, but once a human being does the mitzvah achnosas orchim, if you feed hungry strangers, you get to turn the tables on the angels. You tower over the malachim. Hu omed aleihem. The awesome mitzvah of achnosas orchim, where the human being can rise above heavenly angels. And that's the message of the Torah, why it changes the language. Powerful message over here. The great mitzvah of what? Of Hachnosas Orchim. Now, Abraham interrupts, right? Takes care of the guest, then gets back to God. Let's say the guests would have come in middle of Shmoyne Esrei, Masha. Abraham was davening Shmoyne Esrei, and the guests come. Would he interrupt Shmoyne Esrei? You're not allowed to, even if a snake is crawling up your leg. What's the difference? What's the difference? Why, when God comes to visit him, he interrupts, takes care of the guest, and goes back to God. But he's davening Shmoyne Esrei. Chalila, Abraham, would you interrupt middle of Shmoyne Esrei? Not even if the king greets you or a snake crawls up your leg, right? What's the difference over here? What is the difference? So Rav Soloveitchik answers this question. The Mishnah says in Masechta Brachot, the Mishnah, someone is reading Shema. Someone is reading Shema. You hear? You're reading Shema, and your friend greets you in the middle of Shema. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to answer the greeting in the middle of Shema. You're in the middle of Shema. Don't mix me up. In the middle of Shema, Avram, you got now hear this, now hear this. The Mishnah Masechta Brachot Perik Bet, and the Shulchan Aruch Siman Samach Vav. In the middle of Shema, someone greets you, you're supposed to return the greeting. Even in the middle of Shema. But if someone greets you in the middle of Shemona Esrei, can I return the greeting? No! What's going on? What's going on? What's the difference over here? What is the difference? And the Mishnah quotes the Rashba. The Mutter likatchila. Likatchila. Someone is reading Shema, you're permitted to go over what Dr. Abrams said and greet him. And he's supposed to answer you in the middle of Shema, no less. The Mutter likatchila. To greet someone in Shema, and he has to answer you. Says the great Vas Soloveitchik, what's the key over here? When you are saying Shema, you're Mekabel Ol Malchus Shemayim. What does that mean in English, Abraham? Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim. You are accepting upon yourself God's kingship. How do you do that? Many ways. One way is to smile on a fellow human being. To give a shmeichel, how do you say, a smile? Some people are constipated, they can't smile. Rasaveitchik says that to be mekabel ol malchus shemayim, to receive God's kingdom and God's presence, is by being kind to another human being. So when God came to visit Abraham, that was mekabel ol malchus shemayim. So when he interrupted God to take care of guests, he wasn't interrupting. Yeshana, hear the point. By being kind to a person, by doing chesed for a person, it's part of Mikabel Ol Malchus Shemayim. I'm saying Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. I'm being Mikabel Ol Malchus Shemayim. How do you do that, Avi? One way is to do kindness to greet another person. So it's no interruption. It's no interruption. You are receiving God's presence by doing chesed, kindness. And, you know, a smile at the right time is a chesed. Someone's having a bad hair day and you smile on him. That's a great act of chesed. It doesn't cost you any money. Please hear me well. Let me get to the punchline. So therefore, in the middle of Shema, that's like in the middle of God's visit to Abraham, when he greets the people, that's not an interruption. That's receiving God's presence by doing kindness to a person. That's the Shema. That's what Abraham did when God came to visit him. That's Shema, receiving God's kingship. But when you're davening Shemona Esrei, God didn't come to me. I am begging him for my life. When I'm davening Shemona Esrei, I am begging the king for my life. Nobody exists but you and me and me and you. There I can't interrupt. Two separate issues over here. Receiving God's presence to Shema, you receive God's presence by doing chesed to a person. But I'm davening Shemona Esrei, I'm not receiving God's presence. I'm begging for my life, my health. Then how could I dare interrupt? I sought out the king for a private audience. There I ignore everybody. That's the main difference. Why Abraham would not interrupt Shemona Esrei, but the Shema, you do interrupt if somebody greets you. That's pretty amazing. Powerful message. And the same thing is, what? Now, so Abraham gives them Achila Shtiya Levia. He gives them a meal, and then the Pasuk says in Genesis 18:16, he gets up to escort them. Genesis 18:16, after the meal, he gets up to escort them. Now, why do we need to know that 3,800 years ago, Abraham, he still thought that they're Arabs? Why do we have to know that after the meal, he escorted them? Why do we have to know that? The Torah is not a history book. The Torah is GPS to teach that the mitzvah of giving a guest a meal consists of food, drink, eshel, achila, shtiya, leviyah. Eshel, achila, food, shtiya, drink, and leviyah, and to give the person an escort. When he's finished, you escort him out, at least 10 feet out the front door. So we learned that from Avram. He gave them food, drink, and also he escorted them. So Maimonides tells us something amazing, that what? That of the 3 parts of the mitzvah of Achnosas Orachim, the most important part of it is what? Escort. I would say it's the food and the drink. Save your escort. But Maimonides says no. After you give them food and drink, the major part of the mitzvah is what? To escort the person out. The question is why? Why is that so important? The escort is the most important part. The Rambam says, Schar haLeviyah, the reward for an escort, Meruba min hakol, is greater than giving him steak and chips and a wine. I'll take the steak and chips and the wine over the escort. Rambam says, why? So the answer is as follows. When you give a guy a meal, if you give him a Chinese meal, in 12 minutes he's hungry again. A lot of MSG, right? But even if you give him a steak and a very hearty meal, the hana wears off, right? You give him a hearty meal and nice wine to drink, but in a few hours he'll be hungry again. So the pleasure is temporary. But when you give the person an escort, you are giving hana to his neshama, You're honoring his soul. You're giving kavod to the soul. How does King David call the word soul in Psalm 30? Kavod. Kavod. You're giving kavod to the kavod. That doesn't wear off like a Chinese meal. When you escort the person, you're giving honor to his neshama. That stays with him forever. It doesn't wear off. And therefore, Maimonides says that's the most important part of the mitzvah. Achi chashuv. That you give the person a meal, you escort him at least 10 feet out the front door. Because it doesn't wear off, it remains in the neshama forever, that you honored the person, you enjoyed his company, you're showing that by what? By escorting him out. Now, how come Jews make the best lawyers? Who's the first lawyer in human history? Avraham Avinu. How he bargains with God. He defends the Sodomites better than Alan Dershowitz. He fights with God. He argues with God. Jews love to bargain, right? That's what you get, right? Abraham's deli, and then he became a great lawyer. Abraham had a deli, right? He fights and he argues with Hashem. Abraham's compassion extends even to these cruel people. What a message over here. What's the message? To try to find the good in anybody. No matter how bad a person is, he has some good points. Perhaps he can be rehabilitated. So God said, these guys are all gone. Nice try, Abraham, but what? There's no hope for these guys. There's no hope for these guys. And therefore, it says something very strange. You know, Yud Kei Vav Kei means God's Midas Harachamim, and Elokim means Midas Hadin. So when God punishes, it should say what? Elokim. Right? Midas Hadin. But if you take a look, when God nukes Sodom, something very strange there. Look at the name that is used. When God nukes the city through the Malach.
Where are you?
1 second, let me find it over here. Yeah. Genesis 19:24. If you wouldn't see it inside, you wouldn't believe it, Abraham. Genesis 19:24. What does it say?
Now Hashem had called sulfur.
Hashem nuked the city. It should have said Elokim himter al Sodom. God is punishing these people. He's wiping them out, Shoshana. It should say Elokim. But it says Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei means what? Compassion. That's being compassionate to nuke a city? Abraham, what's going on? Why it says Vashem? It should have said Elokim himter al Sodom. Yud Kei Vav Kei is Rachamim. Yes, to destroy evil is an act of compassion. The Mishnah says in Sanhedrin, when the wicked are destroyed, it's good for them and for the world. Why is it good for the world? Can't suffer no more. It's good for them. They can't do evil anymore. God took them out of their misery. To destroy totally evil people is being an act of compassion. It's saving the world and it's saving them from committing more acts of evil. Therefore it says Yehuda Yudke Vavke, nuke the city and not Elokim. Very interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the Ramban says something incredible. The Ramban, writing in 1265, seems to be describing a nuclear blast. God nuked the city, because if you take a look at Genesis 19:28, Abraham looked towards the city, and what did he see? He saw a mushroom cloud. Hello? He saw a mushroom cloud. Nachmanides says that this was the way he describes it. He says that the air was poisoned. What does poison air mean? Radioactive fallout. That God nuked the city, and therefore Avram saw like a mushroom cloud arise over the city. So why was Lot saved? Genesis 19:29, when God destroyed the city, God remembered Abraham and he rescued Lot. How did God remember Abraham, says Rashi? How did he remember Abraham? But what exactly what? So Rashi's strange Rashi. Rashi says he remembers what Lot did for Abraham. Remember when they went down to Mitzrayim? And Avram said that Sarah is what? My sister. And Lot didn't rat out his uncle. He could have said, my uncle's lying. It's not really his sister, it's his wife. And he kept his mouth shut. Therefore he was saved. You understand this, Rashi? He did an act of achnosas orchim. He took these guests in. He risked his life. That wouldn't save him. The fact that he didn't rat out his uncle to the KGB, that's why God saved him from the nuclear holocaust. What about his act of achnosas orchim that he did? When he took in the malachim, he thought they're strangers. That doesn't count for anything, Avi? There's a powerful point being made over here. Very powerful point. The Mishnah says in Avos 2, be very careful to do an easy mitzvah like a heavy mitzvah. Because you never know the reward of a mitzvah. There's a powerful message over here. Victor Miller Zatzal, you heard of him?
Oh, yeah.
What a point. Masha, if you hear this, now hear this.
My brother-in-law was his gabbai.
Oh, then he'll like this. People think that God only rewards me for the big ticket items. Even this act, he didn't rat out his uncle. He could have. So you would think it's not a big deal. For God, it's a big deal. How much God loves the person. You do a small act of kindness, right? You didn't tattletale when you could have. You smiled on somebody when you didn't have to. So you would think it's nothing. Oh, you got a big reward waiting for you. The Mishnah Navot, be careful to do what you think is a light mitzvah. As a heavy mitzvah, you don't know the reward for a mitzvah. So this is what Rashi is saying. Even if only Lot did that. Of course, he had bigger mitzvahs, but even just for that small act of kindness, he could have turned his uncle in and he didn't. I and you dismiss it. God doesn't dismiss it. How much God loves the person. For any act of kindness you do, even though you think it's insignificant, you're going to get a great reward. And that is the message of this powerful Rashi of why Lot was what? Why Lot was what? Saved. What? Not a big deal. But to God, any act of kindness, no matter how insignificant, to God it's a big deal. And that's the message that what? That we have to be aware of. There's a frightening Rashbam over here. Frightening Rashbam. It's just unbelievable. The Rashbam writing in the 1000s. If you take a look at Genesis 21, verse 31 and 32, Why is the city called Beersheba? Because Abraham and the king of the PLO made a Oslo 1. Incredible. Genesis 21, verse 31 and 32. The city was called Beersheba, the well of 7, because Abraham had given 7 sheep to the king of the PLO as a goodwill gesture, Dr. Abramson, a goodwill gesture. It's incredible. The king of the PLO says to Abraham in Genesis 21:29, what are you giving me these 7 sheep? So Abraham says in 30, these 7 sheep that I'm giving you, the well of 7, it's a goodwill gesture. Even though you're a terrorist, I'm making a goodwill gesture. Therefore, the place was called Beersheba. They swore to each other. Verse 32, Yehuda, they both made a Oslo treaty in Beersheba. The king of the PLO, his name was Avimelech at the time. But he was the Arafat of his time, right? So he made a peace treaty. And right after that, Genesis 2:1, right after that, what does it say? After these things, God tortured Abraham. For 3 days, Abraham thinks he has to kill his only son. After what things? Yehuda, 22:1.
After the treaty.
Says the Rashbam, Abraham, what are you doing? I promised the whole land of Israel to you and your children. Why are you doing land for peace? What are you giving goodwill gestures, giving away Beersheba to the PLO? Take your son and kill him. Otherwise, I'm the Parshat, Genesis 21 and 22. After the peace treaty with the king of the PLO, God, after these things, the Torah says, God tortured Abraham. For 3 days, he thinks he's going to kill his son. Says the Rashbam, this was a punishment.
Not much has changed.
A punishment. Every goodwill gesture we give to our enemies leads to Akedah. What does Akedah remind you of, Abraham?
Yeah.
Blood, smoke, fire, death. The Rashbam writing 1,000 years ago. When we make goodwill gestures to our enemy, it leads to the Akedah. Land for peace leads to Nebuch. Smoke, blood, fire.
Is that true?
Was he a Navi? The Rashbam writing, Rashi's grandson, writing in the year 1000 and something. So therefore, this was a punishment. Avram, what are you making peace treaties, giving away your precious land to your deadly enemy? I promised it to your son. Why are you giving it away? Take your son and kill him. So for 3 days, he suffered this anguish and agony, thinking that he has to kill his son. Says the Rashbam, it was a punishment for Oslo 1.
Really?
Oslo 1, right? Nebuch, how many people were burned alive in the burning buses? What's the Akedah, that guy? The Akedah. You burned alive. How many Jews were burned alive on the bus bombings? That's because we made goodwill gestures, giving away our precious land. If only our fearless leaders would learn the Rashbam, Masha, we wouldn't have had all of these Nebuch Karbonot, all of these Akedas Nebuch. Turn to the Chumash. Read the text with the Rashbam, Rashi's grandson.
Huge, Rabbi.
Incredible. We ignored the Torah at our own peril. People think the Torah is stories. It's GPS, God's personal system for the here and now.
The Rabbi said, don't give away an inch.
Well, the Rashbam said before the Rebbe. The Rashbam, 1,000 years ago. What a powerful message. What a powerful message. Wow, wow. Imagine how Abraham felt for 3 days, Avi, in anguish. God made him twist in the wind as a punishment for giving away your precious land to the king of the PLO. Then he was called Avimelech. Today he's called what? Arafat Abu Mamzer.
Yeah.
Same address, right? Oto Geveret B'Shinu Aderet. What does that mean? Oto Geveret B'Shinu. The same enemy, but a different dress, a different kafiyah. So the message is, Avram, beware. Beware. Do what the Torah says. Avram made a terrible mistake. We have to learn from his mistake. He had nobody to learn from. Ma'aseh Asim Labanim, says the Nachmanides. The deeds of the fathers are a sign for the children. what to do, and sometimes
Or not to
what not to do. Says the great Nachmanides Avram, with this I'll end. The sign of the fathers are written, not stories, to follow what they do, and sometimes to learn from their mistakes what not to do. Thank you, Shabbat Shalom. Sunday at 2 o'clock. Thursday at 2:30, Sunday at 2. Thank you.